If you've been wondering if you could ever feel like yourself again during menopause without relying on hormones, you're in the right place. Welcome to Truth or Trend. This is where Dr. Vrzal and myself, Dustin Strong, take some time to look at these trends that are becoming popular and these things that everybody does and determining whether or not it's truly a good idea to do it, whether it's actually safe, whether it's a short term band aid solution, or if it's a really good long term solution. We're here to dissect everything that people talk about out there. There's a lot of misinformation, and our goal is to really get down to the absolute truth and what is real and what is marketing and share that with you. And not only like look at the research and look at the logic behind it all,
Hmm.
but also like
Hmm.
what we see happening every day in the clinic, like what actually happens with real live people as opposed to these theoretical situations. And that's what we're here for. So today, one of the things that we've had a lot of people asking us about is menopause. A lot
Right.
of concern and confusion out there, and it's shocking and alarming to me how many people are told that it's totally fine and safe to take all of these excess hormones. This has been a big deal, and a lot of people are already getting ready to turn off this video because like, I take hormones and they're fine. But there are dangers if you aren't careful with those for sure. And I would never personally encourage someone to use those because it is unnatural and there are potential hazards. And I'll just say right away, the first thing that comes to mind is 70% of breast cancers are estrogen receptor positive breast cancers, right? And anybody I know in oncology, as soon as somebody gets a cancer diagnosis, the first thing they're going to do is remove all the hormones from them, right? And so it's unbelievable to me that this it's still so normalized, this deviation, that everybody's take on because they feel a little bit better. And I get that. And people want to feel better. But we can use that information just like Dr. V does with headaches to learn about what's going on in the body and make you the healthiest version of yourself. So, Dr. V,
Right.
what do you want to tell everybody about menopause?
Well, you let the cat out of the bag already. We're talking, truth or trend. The truth is that there are risks, right? And so
Right.
typically, the bigger risk is the estrogen or unopposed estrogen is really where a lot of the consequences come from. So the allopathic profession is going to say, so that's why we give estrogen or, we give testosterone with it. I'm sorry, that's why we give progesterone with it. But ultimately, we're still putting an undue burden on the liver. And just to kind of throw it out in the beginning to hopefully keep people engaged and inspire. I had a gal that claimed she needed it. She felt better on her HRT that I've been treating for years at this point. And and I was trying to dance around, do supplements to offset some of the side effects, if you will, of the HRT, hormone replacement therapy. But I could tell through the muscle testing that it was inhibiting methylation. And we've talked about this on the podcast before. Methylation activates those tumor suppressor genes. In other words, methylation is our way of killing those tumor cells, right? And, breaking them down before they get ahead. I mean, we're always making tumor cells, if you will. And when the body doesn't break those down fast enough or get ahead of the game, then we have growth, right? And it takes 2 to 5 years. If you're talking mammograms, might as well throw that out there. Mammograms, it takes 2 to 5 years for that mass to be visible on a mammogram, whereas a thermography is measuring metabolic activity. That's going to show tomorrow if there's metabolic activity in that area. So ladies, that way it always kind of baffles me that they're putting radiation, another known carcinogen, to test for cancer, right? Wait a minute, what's wrong with this picture?
Yeah.
So thermography isn't cheap. I mean, it's typically $100, to find, you can find somebody that'll even do it mobile or do it in your area, and they basically just look for it's thermogram, they're looking for heat. It's heat-seeking missiles.
Right.
And
Right.
so, if they have a bunch of heat in that area, we know, hey, there's consequence, there's risk. So
Mhm.
that gal was taking the HRT. I could again knew that it was inhibiting methylation. We were trying to give her supplements for it. Now we're fortunately successfully, but now we're treating her for the breast cancer that ultimately manifested after 5 years of me saying, look, we're flirting with danger, flirting with danger. So we really don't want those types of stories, and we want to try to learn from her challenges and learn from what the potential consequences are. And the challenge is the reality is our livers are stressed in industrialized living. There is chemicals we're breathing chemicals every time we're outside, unfortunately, in the air. Or our foods are processed and have red dyes and trans fats and things in there that are going to be stressful on the system. And so the liver's already under stress. And then you put that synthetic hormone on top of it, and that's very likely the proverbial final straw, if you will, that the liver cannot overcome anymore. And that's a lot of where our challenges come from.
Mm.
So there's kind of the upfront,
Right.
what we're dealing with.
I'm going to hook into what you just said there, and let's get a little more specific about those women who are going through this and why they're
Hmm.
reaching for the hormones. Right. One of the main
Hmm.
reasons that I think a lot of women are reaching for this or looking for an answer is the hot flashes. Right. These hot flashes
Right.
are a big deal, and
Hmm.
are just it definitely inhibits your quality of life and is concerning. And so let's talk about hot flashes. Number one, let's give some solutions here. And you mentioned trans fats. Right?
I did.
This is something that's been known for a long time that these trans fats can be a massive piece in causing this, right? It takes,
Hmm.
I think, what, 120 days for these trans fats to process out of your body. So when you're
Right.
eating those French fries or those potato chips, we shouldn't be right now anyway, because they're on the
I
dirty,
was just saying, not me.
right? Yeah, not you. If you're listening and you're doing that, you have to know that it's going to take a while to process those out. And one of the things that people aren't doing to help process them out is eating enough healthy fats. And we've talked about this a lot. I mean, the
Mhm,
half-life of a good
mhm,
healthy fats, 18 days. And what do we mean by that? Like fish, right? Omega 3s, fish oils.
mhm,
And we've
mhm,
been
mhm.
told that fats are bad. And I think that's a major contributor. And I just want to share this, and I mentioned it to you before that I was listening to a doctor talk, and his number one solution, right, majority of the time for hot flashes, was to take something called Cataplex F from standard process,
Mhm,
which is your fats. And he said in
mhm,
21 days, it almost always worked. And it just took 21 days to do it. So if you have
mhm.
a stubborn hot flashes out there and you're a chiropractor or a SP practitioner and you haven't tried that yet, try that, right? Throw Cataplex F in there for 21 days or a good healthy fat because
Mhm.
we know people aren't getting enough healthy fats, so it makes sense, right? And they're getting too
Right.
many trans fats, which
Mhm, mhm.
I mean right there. But what else do
Right.
you think of for hot flashes for people if that's
Well, I
their
mean, along those lines, look at the mechanism, right? So cholesterol is the building block for the hormones, right?
right?
And so theoretically, hormones are shutting down, the ovaries are shutting down, not producing those hormones as much. So the liver starts overproducing or trying to compensate and produces more cholesterol to create the building blocks for the symptom, right? So we need those good fats to make the cholesterol to lower cholesterol, keep cholesterol balanced. They're anti-inflammatory, they're blood sugar stabilizing. So there's so many, valuable positive mechanisms in there. Then there's also get a little technical, but that delta 5 desaturase is a pathway where the good fats become bad fats. They become inflammatory. Think PMS symptoms. That's
Hmm.
where like carbohydrates, insulin causes that good fat, the prostaglandin 1 and 2, the good fats, they become, prostaglandins 1 and 3, the anti-inflammatory good fats become inflammatory, the prostaglandin 2s, which are inflammatory.
Hmm.
In the presence of insulin, right? And so
Right.
that's part of where that Cataplex F helps keep that delta 5 desaturase less active so that we can keep those good fats in as anti-inflammatory fats instead of shuttling into inflammatory. So that's where the carbohydrate mechanism. So the other
To
thing
break it down a little bit, right? What you're saying is
Mhm.
that as a hot flash could be your body trying to communicate with you that number one, you may not be getting any good healthy fats, but number two,
Right,
you're getting too many unhealthy fats, but also too many carbohydrates, right? Too much sugar.
right,
So
right.
that could be message and information for you to say, oh, let me think back to the last couple of weeks. Have I been eating too many carbohydrates, right? Have I not been
Hmm.
eating enough healthy fats? That's the
Right.
questions that you should start asking yourself when you get these hot flashes. Because if you just keep on that path, that's something else is going to be a problem, right? This
Gonna
isn't
break.
right. You'll break.
Right. Right. And so the other, as I alluded to, fruit or insulin is the other thing that's going to cause people to gals people in this situation to be inflammatory. And
Right.
so that's another easy lifestyle change. Fruit, I mean, the God-given, healthy dessert, if you will, but too much of that. Typically, it's about 2 servings a day. Seems to be threshold in my patient population where they can have some fruit with their whatever their yogurt or their meal, uh, but if they surpass that 2 servings a day, seems to be the threshold for most of my patients at least, that then they start having hot flashes. So that's
Mm.
an easy thing to fix. It's not saying that it's forbidden altogether. It's just
Right.
limit it. Keep your refined sugar, your fructose, fruit sugar, to a manageable level. Again, another story on this one is a gal that had fruit trees. She had a backyard full of lovely, organic fruit trees,
Mm.
and every summer, that's pretty literally what she would live on. Was fruit.
Right.
But I have to eat it. So, I have my peaches and my plums, and in the backyard, and oranges, and I'm like, yeah, it's great fruit, but eat some protein in there in between. And we kept dancing with it, and every summer she'd basically become diabetic. And
Mm.
then, the summer, then the fruit trees weren't producing, and she'd get back on track. And unfortunately, that was not a good end, and it ultimately took her out, because she kept doing it year after year, making this summer change. And so, anyway, that mechanism, too much fruit, is another symptom, another thing that I'm typically starting with gals to help stabilize that. So
Right.
go ahead, you had something else, and then we need
No,
to
this
talk
is
about
great. I love it.
adrenals.
So if you're making a mental checklist, right? If you're having hot flashes, just think, hey, have I had any healthy fats? Have I had too many trans fats? Have I eaten too much fruit, right? Too much.
Mhm, mhm.
I mean, too much. Like you said, two
Right.
servings a day sounds about an appropriate amount. Um,
Mhm.
and you were about to bring on the next thing for this checklist, right? What were you going to say? It was,
Well, adrenals.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, I mean, basically, perimenopause is the ovaries starting to retire, starting to shut down. Then the adrenals need to pick up the slack, right?
Right,
The adrenals, functionally, God gave us adrenals as secondary hormone sex characteristics to pick
right.
up the slack when we're under stress and to keep the body functioning and so on. And
Yeah,
so ultimately, when the ovaries or andropause, men's symptoms, the prostate starts, shutting down, or these things, or testicles, sorry, then the adrenals need to pick up the slack. And so much like the liver being under chronic stress in general is, we're chronically beating down the adrenals, and we don't have enough adrenal reserve left to
right,
make the progesterone through the stressful periods and so on. And so a lot of the symptoms are because we don't have the adrenal reserves to get through that season. So
right.
then, we want to talk about ways to rebuild those adrenals, to, how to handle that manifestation.
Right. I mean, you got to think about so the natural course of it. If your endocrine system's like a team, like an athletic team, right?
Hmm.
Handing
Hmm.
the ball off to the adrenals to finish, the job. But if
Yeah.
those adrenals have been injured their whole life, they're not going to do
Right.
a job. They're going to be limping, right? And that's we need to
Right.
help them out. And like I want to remind people, we do beat up our adrenals. Like we assume that they're the indestructible, unbelievable things that should be able to do everything for us. But if they're not able to pick up right where the ovaries are leaving off, then yeah, you're going to have some
Hmm.
symptoms. Um,
Yeah.
and
One
then,
of my favorite herbs. We might as well cover it. Is that where you were
yeah,
going to go?
go for it. Go
Yeah,
for it.
well,
Yeah.
it's one of my favorite herbs. I mean, typically when I see women starting to transition from a menopausal way,
Hmm.
not the other bad kind of transition that's popular in the press these days. Gals don't like that joke when I say when they have a hysterectomy. I'm like, oh, you're transitioning. So rhodiola and ginseng, though, tends to be an herbal complex I find to help smooth that transition. Those herbs seem to help from a hormonal perspective, both a hormonal perspective and an adaptogen perspective, meaning adapt to the effects of stress, if you will.
Hmm.
So and the beauty is it's a great combination for athletic performance as well. So
Hmm.
that rhodiola and the ginseng really help the adrenals adapt to that change that's taking place, which is perimenopause. Perimenopause basically means you're starting to have hot flashes, you're starting to have these symptoms, periods are getting irregular, and then menopause ultimately just means like, hey, it's been a year since since I've menstruated, right?
Right.
So
Hmm.
that's kind of the difference. The symptoms are virtually the same, just means whether or not you've had a period. We talked offline, kind of the joke about this is one of those things where when I get gals healthy, they tend to not like me because they go back to normal menstruation.
Happens a lot. You're getting younger, right? You're going to
Right.
the earlier phase of your life.
That's the Benjamin Button principle.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, see it all the time with, one trying to, stabilize the cycle for fertility in the younger years. And then, in the older years, sometimes half time they don't even tell me. They just figure it is the way it is what it is, if you will. And we
Mhm.
fix their adrenals, or get them healthy, get their blood sugar stabilized. And they're like, "What'd you do to me?" I was happy to be done with that.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and sometimes it could be structural. I've seen people get adjusted and have their
Mhm.
cycles return, right? So there could be a lot of things that have kind of put the pause on the menopause, right?
Yes, yes.
Early, and it's a stressor of some sort. And you relieve that, and yeah, you're going to feel better. And if we're going to talk about adrenals, I would refer back to our episode 23 and say, if more people knew about ways to protect their endocrine system with protomorphogens, I think
Hmm.
that we would have a lot less people reaching for hormone replacement therapy
Right.
because it does so much for that, right?
Hmm.
Adrenotrophin for the adrenals is one of my absolute favorites these days. It seems to make a huge difference for sleep and so many things for people to recover. But that's why you have things like Simplex F that include that, but also support for the ovaries and the thyroid and the pituitary. And I would say
Hmm.
that a lot of the hormone exposures that we're getting and all these, early onset, people taking birth control early and all of these things really messes
Yeah.
with the thalamus, right?
Yeah,
The,
for
the,
sure.
the one that's in
Mhm.
charge of all that. And if we don't do something to take some of the stress off of that, do some repair, some protection for that, I mean, of course, inevitably you're going to have, probably earlier onset menopause, or you're going to have a rough menopause transition, right? Because the
Mhm.
whole, as I call it, orchestra is not on the same page, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mean, you mentioned hypothalamus. I mean, I call it the thermostat. I mean,
There you
so
go.
just we need to need to help, make that clear to, both doctor and, menopause reducing symptom people watching.
Yeah. Well, and it's more
Yeah.
than just a thermostat, right? Because right, we're talking
Yeah.
about hot flashes specifically right
Right.
now, but yeah, I
Right.
mean, there's so many things that could be off. Your diet, your appetite, your over appetite or your under appetite, right? All of these things
Mm-hmm.
that seem to be mysterious to people if you don't go back and take a look at that hypothalamus.
Right.
You're going to be chasing all kinds of things when you do have
Yeah.
the opportunity to heal it.
And when we looked at this, the medical approach is HRT with
Yep.
known, very, very well known big risks, or selected, SSRIs. So basically, that's the medical profession saying we don't have an answer, so you're crazy, right?
Right. Here's your
Take the
antidepressant.
antidepressant, right? Yeah,
And
or gabapentin. I mean, it's the
right,
stuff that they throw at everything. It's just it's appalling, really.
right.
And then as I was looking at it, there's a clip in this article I saw that, there's no proof. We haven't seen any proof that natural medicine has shown any answers. And so, well, that depends on the natural medicine practitioner. Maybe that person didn't have the answers. So keep searching, like our podcast that actually is going to drop on Monday. But keep searching like David did for 10 years till he found answers, right? So
That's
be
right.
persistent. I mean, if you search in 10 years, you're going to be done with menopause long by that point. But
Right.
the
Well, but you
answer is
might not
out
be
there.
done with what medicine has told you to do. And this is, I can't miss this opportunity because you just said SSRIs are being prescribed for this. And so
Yeah.
what I want to point out to people who they should absolutely know this, that estrogen, is going to be the result of any HRT, right? Whether it's progesterone or testosterone, it's going to end up as estrogen,
Hmm.
most likely, right? And that estrogen mobilizes copper in the blood, right? So if
Okay.
you're taking an antidepressant and your low mood was being driven by high copper, the estrogen is going to contribute to that. So what I'm saying is it can make you depressed to take these hormones for too long. And that's why
Hmm.
I want to point out again, Dr. Walsh says, I think it was 17% of 30,000 people we looked at, the main driver of their depression was too much copper. And he said
Hmm.
97% of those people were females, and it was estrogen that was driving it. So
Hmm.
that,
Hmm.
that concerns me, right? If they're going to say, well, here's your HRT and here's your SSRI, you could be having a really hard time with mood, and it's actually your hormones that are causing your depression, right? Your low dose.
100%.
You're not
Well,
wanting
yeah.
to do that.
Thank
So
you.
yeah,
I was chomping at the bit to get to that low dopamine point.
yeah, exactly. Well, that's what it is, right? It's low dopamine,
So
right?
yeah, so symptomatically, that's one of the ways I look at, whether estrogen is high or low, is dopamine is the brain's control. It's a precursor to estrogen. So if estrogen or if dopamine is low, that's the symptoms of poor memory. Dopamine is a hard drive for storing those memories. So
Right,
that's the menopause brain, right? The gals talk about, I can't remember why I walked in the room, or blah blah
right.
blah. But dopamine's also the thing that gets us high, if you will, gets us excited for life and bonding, connect, precursor to oxytocin that we've done a podcast back in the beginning about.
Yeah.
So dopamine's profound for the way that we feel, and that's that deep-seated depression when dopamine's low. So that's symptomatically associated with low dopamine or low estrogen. Then when dopamine's too high, pathologically, that's schizophrenia. So do you want to be depressed and life sucks, or do you want to be schizophrenic and see the craziness? So
Right.
the symptom before schizophrenia, before it's a pathologic problem, is vivid dreams and nightmares. So ladies, there's one of your symptoms. If your estrogen is too much, if your HRT is doing you dirty, if you will,
Yeah.
vivid dreams, nightmares, waking up, panic attacks, those are signs of high dopamine. So that's another symptom for you to look at that hey, this is I'm doing too much. I'm putting too much stress on my system. And as you would unfortunately, dopamine metabolism, methylation. So again, that's an early warning sign that, hey, if I keep doing this, I'm stressing that methylation pathway. I'm opening the door to the big ugly, right? And so
Right. Right.
learn and use these early symptoms like headaches, to figure out what, speaking of
Right.
bitemporal headaches are an estrogen metabolism concern.
Right.
So that's a whole another, that's another symptom that's going to be an early warning.
Maybe your next book should be The Hot Flash Advantage, right?
Take advantage of your hot flashes.
Well, that's the point, and that's what we're trying to take away. We don't just want to warn people, right? There are way better ways to do this, and you actually need to get information from these. And there are a lot of concerning dangers of just taking hormones, and of course, taking an SSRI if that's what they're telling you to do. There are
Hmm.
the things we can do. If we haven't covered what you're looking for when it comes to menopause, if we didn't answer what you came here to find, please leave it in the comments and we will do a video. We want to make sure that we're providing you with this perspective and solutions that you can apply to your life that are only going to give you side benefits and not give you these dangers and these side effects.
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
at the time, Dr. B, and I actually do have an appointment who's going to be waiting for me soon to help
All
them
right,
with their hormones.
rock and
So,
roll.
any last things
So,
that you want to
well,
say?
yeah, just real quick, we need to talk about wild yam. Wild
Yes.
yam resensitizes hormone receptors. So that's one of the more common. I talked about rhodiola and ginseng to help the adrenal part. Wild yam resensitizes those receptors. It's going to smooth that transition, ladies, so that you can make better use of the hormones that you do have.
Right.
So that's another great herb to help smooth that transition. So just
And
in
it's not just
summary,
covering up the symptoms, it's actually helping with the healing, which is what,
correcting
which is
yeah,
cool. Yeah.
facilitating the proper functioning of the body, which is ultimately what we want to do. That is treat the true cause, right? Treat the underlying root of why the problem is there. So then in summary, check your fruit content or fruit
Right.
amount. Too much fruit, too much sugar is going to set up hot flashes.
Yeah.
Do you have signs of adrenal fatigue? Other signs of adrenal fatigue: L5, low back pain. That's an adrenal problem. Knee weakness or ankle weakness. Signs of adrenal fatigue. So if you have some of those symptoms or just fatigue in general, that's a sign that adrenals could use some help. So you're going to want to look at adrenal supplements like rhodiola ginseng or adrenal glandulars to rebuild the adrenals. If that's your constellation of perimenopause or menopausal symptoms.
My
Then
brother
we've
told me
got the
another
F.
that would probably be relevant for all Americans to determine whether they have a need for adrenal support. He said you take your hand like this and you check right here with these two fingers, and if you have a pulse, probably need some help with your adrenal.
True story.
Right.
Yeah, so true. Yep, indeed. And light sensitivity is another adrenal fatigue symptom, right? So
Right.
you're going outside and like, give me my sunglasses. That's a sign your
Right.
adrenals are fatigued.
Right.
So much in there. And then F, if you're having hormonal or your cholesterol's up, or ladies, you're starting to gain weight in this, as your hormones change and transition, look at the good fats, eat more of the good clean fish, take Cataplex F, take your omega-3s. These things are going to help give your body the building blocks it needs to modulate inflammation, to stabilize blood sugar, to have the building blocks to make hormones. So, I mean, these are key players, three fairly easy places to look if you're struggling. You're watching this video, you're probably struggling with menopause, perimenopausal symptoms. Really, menopause should be like, wait a minute, it's been over a year since I menstruated, not all this hot flash. Oh, ladies, how much did you sweat? It should just be like, hey, I'm done, congratulations. Right.
Right.
So there's a quick summary.
Thank you, Dr. V. Always excellent pearl for everybody that are useful and helpful, and that's what we're here to give everybody.
And you too.
Yeah, if we have more questions, please leave them in the comments for us because we want to make sure that we're serving you with this information and not just making, having fun here. I mean, we're having fun, and that's always important.
Always having fun. And we do see and respond to those comments underneath. So feel
Definitely.
free if you have a further question or another suggestion of things that you've seen that have worked,
Mhm.
post it there. Let's share so that people can grow from the other, you the watcher, viewers
Yeah,
inside as well.
awesome. Thank you, Dr. V. I'm sorry we have to cut this short, but this is
All fun.
our menopause, our starting to menopause. I know there's gonna be a lot of
We're
questions.
pausing it.
We're gonna put a
Pausing
pause.
pausing our menopause episode.
All right. Thank you all for watching, and we'll
Yes,
see you in the next
yeah.
one.